Growing up wasn't easy, but I never shied away from hard work. My mom always said, "Life doesn't hand you anything on a silver platter." And she was right. My dad, a mechanic, would nod in agreement, grease staining his hands, a testament to his labor. They were my heroes, showing me that grit and perseverance were the keys to unlocking any door. I started working as soon as I could, juggling school and part-time jobs. My friends were into parties and goofing off, but I had bigger plans. "Why you always hitting the book so hard, Ella?" they'd ask, lounging around with that carefree look I envied but couldn't afford. "Got places to go, man," I'd reply, my eyes glued to the pages of a textbook. "Can't stick around here forever." My teachers noticed. "You've got a sharp mind, Ella," Mr. Jenkins, my high school English teacher, said one day after class. "Don't let anyone dull your sparkle." "Thanks, Mr. J," I replied, the praise fueling my drive. I wasn't just aiming to get out, I was aiming high. High school was a blur of exams, work shifts, and a relentless determination. When I landed a spot in the special program at the state college, it felt like the universe finally tipping its hat to me. "You did it, kiddo," my mom said, her eyes misty. "Knew you would." College was a different ballgame. I studied psychology, fascinated by the human mind. I wanted to understand people, help them navigate their messes. It wasn't long before I started interning, getting a feel for the real deal. After graduation, I landed a job at a community health center, working as a psychologist. My focus was children and their families, each case a new puzzle to solve. The work was tough, emotionally draining, but seeing a kid smile after a session, or a parent breathe easier, made it all worth it. Then there was this one case that got to me. An 11-year-old girl with pyromania, Emily. Her mom, Marissa, a single parent, was at her wit's end. "I don't know what to do with her anymore," she confessed during one session, the desperation in her voice hitting me hard. "Her dad's a deadbeat, never been around. I'm all she's got." "We'll work through this," I assured her, though some nights I'd lie awake, wondering if I was cut out for this. One evening, after a particularly long day, I met up with a couple of friends at a local diner. "You look beat," said Mike, a childhood friend who knew me inside out. "Yeah, it's been a day," I sighed, stirring my coffee. "That's why you gotta lighten up, have some fun," he chided, his tone light but concerned. "Fun's a luxury I can't afford," I quipped, half joking, half serious. "Got a world to change, remember?" The sessions with Emily suffering from pyromania were intense and draining. From the get-go, she was a tough nut to crack, arms folded, eyes darting around the room, avoiding mine. It wasn't just the fire setting, it was the why behind it that we needed to uncover. "Mom's always with her boyfriends. Doesn't really see me, you know?" Emily blurted out one session, her guard momentarily down. Her voice was a mix of anger and hurt, a potent cocktail that explained a lot. "That must feel pretty lonely," I said, keeping my voice steady, trying not to spook her. "Whatever," she shrugged, but her eyes were watery. "It's just how it is." We worked hard, session after session, peeling back the layers of neglect and anger. It was a slow process, but we were making headway. Her mom, always hurried, barely made eye contact during drop-offs and pickups. "We're doing the best we can," she'd say, but her daughter's eyes told a different story. In the midst of this, my own life took an unexpected turn. Late one night, fueled by caffeine and a need for something other than case notes and therapy sessions, I found myself exploring the world of online dating. "Why are you doing this?" I muttered to myself, second-guessing as I clicked through profiles. It felt like shopping for humans, which was both bizarre and slightly thrilling. Then, I saw him. His profile was intriguing, not the usual run-of-the-mill stuff. He liked jazz, had a thing for old movies, and, according to him, made a mean spaghetti bolognese. Why not? I thought and swiped right. The ding of a match was almost instantaneous, followed by a message. "Hey, Ella, I see you're into psychology. Planning to analyze me?" he teased. I chuckled, typing back, only if you're lying about that bolognese. Our chat was easy, filled with banter and surprising depth. Before I knew it, we were arranging to meet. A romantic spot, he suggested. I know, just the place. The place he chose was a cozy little cafe, tucked away from the city's hustle. He was already there, waiting by a table with 2 cups of what I hoped was decent coffee. You made it, he smiled, standing up. He was taller than I expected, with a warmth that put me at ease. Wouldn't miss it, I managed, hoping my smile looked more confident than I felt. We talked for hours. It was one of those rare, effortless conversations that you don't want to end. He was fascinating, sharing stories of his travels, his work, and his love for jazz. What about you? He asked, genuinely interested. What drives you? Helping people, I said without hesitation. There's something about understanding the human mind, you know? Makes the world seem less chaotic. He nodded, his eyes reflecting a respect that made my heart skip a beat. That's impressive, he said earnestly. As the evening wound down, he walked me to my car. I had a great time tonight, he said, his voice soft in the dim light. Would you be interested in doing this again? I nodded, my heart racing. I'd like that. Great, he smiled, his eyes crinkling in a way that made my knees weak. I'll call you, Ella. And he did. 1 date turned into 2, then 3, and before I knew it, I was in 2 deep. He was different from anyone I'd ever met. He listened, really listened, and made me feel seen in a way I hadn't realized I was missing. 6 months flew by, and one night, as we watched the stars from his rooftop, he asked me to marry him. It was sudden, crazy even, but it felt right. Yes, I whispered, the city lights twinkling below us like a promise of something new and terrifyingly beautiful. My friends were skeptical. Are you sure about this? Mike asked one evening, his concern palpable. You've only known him for a short while. I've never been sure of anything, I replied, my decision firm. I was ready to start this new chapter, to explore this unexpected connection that had blindsided me in the best possible way. Life took a quaint turn right after we said, I do. My husband, with his steady job, was raking in enough dough to keep us comfy, cozy even. He came up with this idea, kind of out of the blue. How about you cut down on the work hours, babe? Just focus on us, the house, make it a real home, he suggested one evening, his eyes all lit with hope. At first, the thought rattled me. Work wasn't just a job, it was where I felt I made a difference. But then, watching him, so earnest and full of plans, I warmed up to it. Could be nice, I thought. Playing the devoted wife, diving into this new role head-on. Why not? I'm in, I told him, leaning across the dinner table, the candlelight flickering between us. Let's give this traditional gig a whirl. He was over the moon. You won't regret this, I promise. We'll have the perfect life, you'll see. And so, I dialed back at the clinic, from full throttle to a gentle cruise. Days filled with clients and cases turned into mornings of leisure and afternoons of domestic adventures. I found joy in the little things, like mastering his grandmother's lasagna recipe or finally getting around to redecorating the guest room. It was a novel experience, this playing house, and for a fleeting moment, it was bliss. Look at you, Ella, all homemaker and stuff, my friend Linda teased over a cup of coffee one afternoon. Never thought I'd see the day. I laughed, rolling my eyes. Neither did I. But it's nice, you know? Being there, really being there for him. Yeah, till he gets used to being waited on hand and foot, she quipped, her tone light but her gaze sharp. I shrugged off her caution, lost in the novelty of my new life. But the universe has a funny way of flipping the script just when you think you've got your lines memorized. Not long after, the shift happened. My husband came home, his face drawn, the light in his eyes dimmed. Ella, we need to talk, he began, the words hanging heavy between us. What's up? I asked, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. I put down the dish I was drying and turned to face him, noticing the lines of stress etched across his forehead. It's my job. There's been cuts. My hours, my pay, it's all been slashed, he confessed, finally meeting my gaze. The despair in his eyes was something I hadn't seen before. My heart sank. Okay, we can work through this, I said, more to convince myself than him. I'll pick up more hours at the clinic. We'll cut back on some stuff. It'll be tight, but we can manage. He nodded, looking somewhat relieved, but the tension between us didn't dissipate with the decision. If anything, it marked the beginning of a change that neither of us had anticipated. The following weeks were a blur of work, stress, and silent dinners. My return to full-time hours meant dealing with more cases, more responsibilities, and less time at home. The balance we had found, the rhythm of our life together, was thrown off kilter. "You're always at work, Ella," he complained one evening, his tone sharper than I'd expected. "When you are home, you're too tired to even talk." I bristled at the accusation. "Well, someone's got to keep us afloat," I shot back, my fatigue boiling over into frustration. "I don't see you jumping to find a solution." One day, coming home later than usual, I found him on the couch, the TV blaring some show he wasn't watching. The house was a mess, dishes piled up, and it looked like no effort had been made to do anything. My patience, worn thin by a long day of back-to-back sessions, snapped. "This place is a mess. Do you even care anymore?" I asked, frustration boiling over. He turned off the TV and stood up, his expression darkening. "Why should I? It's not like you're ever here to see it." That hurt. More than the mess, more than the tired arguments. It was the indifference, the resignation in his voice, that cut me the deepest. "We agreed to this. We agreed that I would work more to help us through," I reminded him, my voice trembling with emotion. "Yeah, well, maybe that was a mistake," he retorted, his words like a slap in the face. Things started to get real weird at home. My husband began changing. Coming home late, smelling like he'd bathed in a perfume store. I tried to brush it off, telling myself, "Nah, he's just stressed from work." But deep down, I knew something was up. One night, he came home later than usual, reeking of some fancy perfume. "Where've you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but it trembled anyway. "Work, where else?" He avoided my gaze, heading straight to the shower. "Since when does work smell like a flower shop?" I muttered to myself. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bed felt too big, his excuses too thin. The next evening, when he came home late again, I decided to confront him. "This has to stop," I said, blocking his path to the shower. "What's got into you?" He tried to sidestep me, but I stood my ground. "The late nights, the smells, the lies. What's going on?" My voice cracked, betraying my attempt at toughness. He sighed, a sound of defeat. "It's just work, Ella, okay? Things are complicated." "Complicated how?" "You're smelling like someone else's perfume." I shot back, anger rising. He didn't respond, just shrugged and said he was tired, walking past me. But I wasn't about to let it go. The doubts, the suspicions, they were eating at me. I had to know the truth. The decision came easy, but felt heavy all the same. I called a private investigator the next day. "I need to know what my husband's up to," I told the voice on the other end, feeling like a traitor for even saying it out loud. The PI was all business. "We can start tailing him tomorrow." "It'll cost you, though." "Do it," I said without hesitation. Money was tight, but I needed peace of mind more than I needed cash. The waiting was the hardest part. Every time he left the house, I wondered if he was meeting her. Whoever she was. And every time he came back, acting like nothing was wrong, I felt more like a fool. It was 2 weeks of agony before the PI got back to me. "Got something you'll want to see," he said, his voice grim. We met in a coffee shop, the kind of place you'd never look twice at. He slid a folder across the table to me. The photos inside made my heart stop. There he was, my husband, all smiles and laughs with a woman I recognized instantly, Marissa, the mother of one of my young clients dealing with pyromania. Her daughter, Emily, had been coming to me for months. To see her mom entwined with my husband, it was a gut punch. But the next detail the PI shared knocked the wind out of me. Your husband's lady friend? She's set to marry some young bartender in a few months. I couldn't believe it. Marissa, engaged? And to a bartender, no less, while carrying on with my husband? It was like some twisted soap opera, but it was my life. I thanked the PI, my mind racing with this bombshell information. I had to do something, but confrontation wasn't going to cut it. No, I needed to be smarter, play the long game. Marissa and my husband had made a fool of me, but I was going to turn the tables. The day started off like any other, but when that phone call came in, I could tell something was off. He was all hasty, grabbing his things, and muttering about being called into work. At this hour? I quizzed him, eyebrow raised. Yeah, emergency at the office, he replied, not quite meeting my eye. I let on like I bought it, nodding and watching him rush out. But instead of heading back to my evening plans, I followed him. Something deep in my gut told me this emergency was anything but. His car led me straight to an apartment building, not exactly your typical late-night office scene. I waited a bit before following him inside, making sure I wasn't seen. He went straight to one of the apartments. The door, to my surprise, was unlocked. Heart pounding, I pushed it open and stepped into a scene straight out of a nightmare. There he was, with her, Marissa, and the daughter she's always talking about, Emily, the one struggling with pyromania. The shock on their faces said it all, especially Emily, who looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her up. So, this is work, huh? I couldn't help the sarcasm dripping from every word. He went pale, a guilty man, caught in the act. He started rambling, something about this being his ex-fiancée and the kid being his. I almost laughed at the absurdity. So, you're playing house with your family now? And I'm supposed to be okay with this? He had the gall to suggest we keep things as they were. That he didn't want a divorce, liked things just fine with me taking care of the home, but he wasn't about to give up his little side family. I stared at him, incredulous. You can't be serious. You think you can have your cake and eat it too? That I'd just stand by while you play dad to another woman's kid? Marissa was silent, a deer caught in headlights, and Emily, the girl, looked torn between wanting to disappear and wanting to scream. I turned to Marissa, my gaze sharp. And you gonna spill the beans, or should I? Marissa's face drained of color, her eyes wide with panic. My husband, clueless, looked from her to me. What truth? He demanded, a note of fear creeping into his voice. I laid it all out, each word deliberate, reveling in the unveiling of the sordid web of lies. Your precious Marissa here is planning to marry some young hunk. She's been playing you just as much as she's been playing me. And this whole charade of her wanting her daughter to live with her dear old dad? A farce. Emily is not your daughter. Marissa's trying to dump Emily on you while she runs off into the sunset. His face was a picture of shock and betrayal, the realization hitting him like a freight train. That can't be. But I wasn't done. Oh, and those tickets she bought? For her and her real fiancé. Quite the escape plan, huh? Emily, who had been silent up to this point, her face a mask of confusion and hurt, suddenly found her voice. You were going to leave me? Her voice cracked, the betrayal slicing through the already tense room. Marissa started blubbering, a mess of tears and useless apologies. I thought. Save it, Emily snapped, her young face hardened by the harsh truths. I'll call child services myself. See how you like being abandoned. The girl then turned to me, her eyes pleading. Can you help me, Ella? Please? I nodded, my heart aching for her. Of course, Emily. I'll give them everything they need to know. As Marissa sobbed, begging for forgiveness, Emily stood resolute, her decision made. And me? I was already mentally drafting the divorce papers in my head. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," I told my soon-to-be ex-husband, my voice cold. "I want compensation for every lie, every betrayal." Walking out of that apartment, I left behind the chaos, the lies, and a marriage built on deception. I stepped into the light of day, the weight of my shattered illusions falling away with each step. I found myself a new place in a decent part of town where the streets were quiet, and the neighbors minded their own business. It wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a statement. I was moving on, physically and emotionally. The day I signed the lease on that apartment, I felt a weight lift off me. The divorce was a battle, make no mistake. I went in guns blazing, determined to not let him off easy, not after everything. Either way, I walked out of that courtroom with a substantial chunk of financial compensation. For the cheating and the treason, my lawyer had said, almost like we were discussing a crime novel, instead of my failed marriage. Sitting in my new kitchen, surrounded by unpacked boxes, Linda came over with a look that said she meant business, but also had a softness in her eyes. She dumped a greasy takeout bag on the table and flopped down on a chair. "You did good, Ella," she said, her voice firm, yet gentle. "Really good." I cracked a smile, tired but genuine. "Yeah, I guess I did, didn't I?" It felt odd, acknowledging that I'd come out on top in some way, considering everything. We sat down, surrounded by the remnants of my old life, sipping coffee and munching on donuts. "So," Linda started, her tone shifting, "what's next for you?" I paused, a donut halfway to my mouth. "I've been thinking about that a lot. I want to help people who've gone through the same thing. I've been thinking of starting a support group. No one should have to face this kind of betrayal alone." The conversation turned to lighter topics, but the idea of the support group stayed with me. It felt right, like the path I was meant to take. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work and the development of the support group. The day of the first meeting arrived. I was a bundle of nerves, worrying no one would show up, that my efforts would be in vain. But as the clock struck the hour, people started to trickle in, each face telling a story of pain but also of resilience. "We're all here, because we've been lied to, betrayed by the ones we trusted most," I began, my voice steady, despite the butterflies in my stomach. "But we're also here because we're survivors. And together, we're going to help each other heal and move forward." Nods of agreement met my words, and as the meeting went on, stories were shared, tears were shed, but laughter also echoed through the room. It was the beginning of something special, a community of wounded souls coming together to find strength in their shared experiences. After all the drama, the dust finally settled. Marissa, that woman who nearly wrecked what I had, lost her rights to Emily. The court slapped her with a hefty fine, money that went straight to Emily's care. The kid ended up in a decent shelter, a place where she could get the help she needed without the shadow of her mom's mess hanging over her. And through it all, Emily and I, we kind of found each other. Started off with me continuing her sessions, helping her deal with her pyromania. But it turned into more than that. We became friends, sharing laughs and dreams in between the serious talk. Emily Sharp reminds me a lot of myself when I was her age. She's got this hunger for knowledge, says she wants to dive into psychology when she hits college. Wants to make sense of the world, maybe help folks not get so lost in it like her mom did. As for me, I'm taking a leap too. Planning to open my own psychological practice. It's been a dream for a while, and now, with everything that's happened, it feels like the right time. A place where I can do some good, offer a beacon to those adrift in their own storms. It's funny, you know, how life throws you these curveballs. My marriage falling apart was one of the hardest things I've ever had to face. But here I am, coming out the other side, not just surviving, but thriving. Emily's journey, too, from the chaos of her family life to finding a semblance of stability, it's a testament to the resilience we all carry within us. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Emily. "Hey, I just..." I wanted to say thank you. For everything you've done for me. Her words warmed my heart. You don't have to thank me, Emily. We look out for each other, right? Yeah, she replied, her voice bright. Right. Hanging up, I looked around my little apartment, at the life I was rebuilding piece by piece. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time, I felt hopeful about the future. I had found purpose in the pain, a silver lining in the storm cloud of betrayal.